heavens and the earth. And so that's what we've been dealing with. And today we're going to deal with another dynamic or another aspect of evidence and working through the circumstantial evidence that exists for us to build a case. As a believer, it's our responsibility to have a good dialogue with people. Whether somebody's a believer or a non-believer, it's important for you and I to be informed enough and learned enough to be able to have a good conversation. I don't want to just talk to somebody and say, you got to believe in God because the Bible says you got to believe in God, though we do use the Bible to understand the nature of God. However, there is enough evidence existing outside of the Bible that proves there is a God. Now, to find out who that God is, then we start walking through the progression of going to the Word of God, revealing who He is, and His name is Jesus.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
We good so far?
We good. I heard you reference my Knicks, so go Knicks. That's right.
Nobody cares about the
That's
Knicks.
right. For all y'all who dogged us, who put us down, said we wasn't gonna make it, God did.
Man,
That's
God
right.
chose the Knicks
That's
to win the
right.
finals.
I don't know
No,
about the
he
finals.
did not.
I don't know about the finals.
He did not.
But we got 3 more. But yes, we started off working from the cosmological argument, the argument from the cosmos, and basically we've been talking about how to get people to understand, like you said, the God of the Bible without turning to the Bible. If somebody doesn't agree with or doesn't believe anything in the scriptures, what can you utilize? What can you go to? And so because we believe God created the universe, then we have no issues with science and we have no issues with walking through the evidences of
Correct.
the universe. And
Correct.
so we started off going through the cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And then we worked our way into the teleological argument, the design argument,
Fine tune.
or the fine tune. The fine tuning argument. And that's where we kind of worked our way and got through a lot of good points last week in addressing that. And all of this is for people who just don't take the Bible serious, does not see it as a credible source, and but yet the Bible talks about how through creation mankind is without excuse, like they can still know who He is, and we call that general revelation. So yeah,
But
did you ever go over the premises of the fine tuning or no? Probably
skimmed
maybe
over it a little bit.
Okay.
But one of the things, again, what we want to try to help you use as a way of understanding the discussion, in order to understand the discussion, we want you to realize that we're using phrases that you might be very familiar with. Like I said, circumstantial evidence. So, or understanding, a crime scene, or understanding beyond reasonable doubt. Because ultimately, that's really what we're determining is God guilty, or is God the cause for the existence of heaven and earth? Is God the cause for, the fine tuning of the universe? Is God the cause of all of this beginning? And so we're using the circumstantial evidence, not direct evidence, because nobody was there in the beginning. Nobody could say on day one, I was there and I saw God say, let there be light. And so since we don't have that direct evidence, we still can work through, like any other detective. They work through the circumstantial evidence that exists, that's currently existing, and they go through it, and they go through it a lot, and they keep connecting the dots. They keep putting enough evidence together to build their case to bring a conclusion of who did the act. And so that's what we're kind of like doing through the last couple of real talks, is that we're showing you where the evidence exists to prove that God is the one that did the act. He's the cause of creation. He's the cause of the fine tuning. And then today we want to talk about another piece of evidence to put into the discussion is the cause of moral values or objective moral values. And so we want to get into the discussion of recognizing that we have to understand that if something is good, where did that come from? Like, who determines the standard of good?
Before we go there,
Okay.
just want to conclude on the fine-tuning argument that the only alternatives or the options that we have for why the universe is fine-tuned is either physical necessity, meaning it just had to be this way, that it was by chance or luck,
Okay. Yep.
or just summarizing, just for
Got it.
I know you went over it last week. I'm just
Heard.
summarizing. That the only three options for why the universe is fine-tuned is that, number one, by physical necessity, it just had to exist this way. It's just the why it is. The second thing is by chance or luck. We just luck that we got the universe as is. The third option is design. And we argue that from the evidence that's been presented from the fine-tuning of the universe, which atheist, agnostic agrees that the universe is fine-tuned, we just don't agree on the fact that it's fine-tuned because there's a designer. We believe in design. And so just want to conclude with that thought that once you go through those options, as you talked about plausibility versus possibility, it's more plausible given all the information that we know about the constants in the universe, the arbitrary quantities in the universe and the conditions in the universe, that there is a designer orchestrating how this universe is fine-tuned. All right, sir. Now, we're going to talk about the moral argument.
The moral argument.
Go ahead.
The moral argument. So can we say that there is a moral order that's equivalent to natural order? Meaning, if natural order has been designed by God, that's what we're concluding, right?
Okay.
If God is the cause of the natural order,
Okay.
can we also say then that we must realize there is a moral order within society, and that too must have been caused by God?
Yes.
That's what we're saying. Now, some people, again, there will be pushback. The people will believe that no, it doesn't take God. You know what I'm saying? To understand what good is. It's just that it's progressed to where we understand through what is it called? Natural selection, that it ultimately has to be this way for the survival of the species. Okay. So again, we have to keep in mind when we start talking about the species, animal species, human species, what we're saying is, if you just live by if you just believe that these species were caused on its own, then we are randomly just going through the motion, and we consider that things just happen by chance. Like love just happened by chance. But I want to throw an organized thought for this.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna share an organized thought regarding the objective moral order. And what we're saying is that can we be convinced enough with evidence? Can we be convinced enough with evidence that just as we have proven that God is the cause of the natural order, God then must be the cause of the moral order that exists? And here's the premise. This goes like this. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Number two, we recognize objective moral values and duties do exist, therefore God exists. You got the premise?
Yeah, I get the argument.
So the argument is, if God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. But number two says objective moral values and duties do exist. Three concludes then, therefore God exists. So we have to work through that. And if we can prove that, if we can prove 1 and 2, then 3 automatically is just,
Yeah, it just logically follows.
it follows. So then what we're saying, number 1, is then if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Now, would you believe that most people will say killing another human being would be wrong?
Yes.
You that are viewing or you that are out there watching, I think you would conclude by saying the same. If I were to kill Jack, I could not show up at the court and say, what was wrong with that? Why do you all say it's wrong? I'm saying that it's not wrong at all. Well, that's in action saying that there is then an objective moral value or right or wrong to things. Would you agree to that?
Yeah. I mean, and to take a step further, that wouldn't be killing, that would be murder, right?
Correct. It'd be, so we would call it murder. But I'm
Yeah.
saying if I killed you and
Yeah.
and then somebody said, oh, you just murdered that dude. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna be like, what are you talking about? I didn't murder him.
Yeah.
So what if I ended up doing something that killed him?
Yeah.
And if I intentionally ran him over with my car and I intentionally made sure that he died after I ran him over and I intentionally did this.
We would say that no sane person would say that those actions are righteous or right.
Correct. So what we're getting at is this, and you have to listen to the argument. We're saying that we recognize that then there is an opinion about morality that stands whether if you want to agree with it or not. That's objective. Okay. Objective is that regardless of what you think about something, it's believed to be right or wrong.
Yes. Independent of your feelings.
Y'all with me? So regardless if I say there's nothing wrong with me killing him, objectively, you all would be like, no, there is. Like, regardless of how you feel, that is wrong to kill another human being. Subjective reality would be like, well, that's how I feel, so therefore I can do it. And society as a whole would have to agree subjectively that's okay for you to feel that way. Because we all agree that there is a subjectivity in our existence. It's okay for us to have our opinion and live out our opinion regardless of what other people think, because there is no absolute objective or truth.
From society's worldview.
Yes. No, I'm saying, from society, that's what they're saying. If we allowed subjectivity, meaning we allowed subjective opinions to exist and be paramount throughout society, that in our community, what rules is your own opinion.
Yeah, just living your truth.
Just living in your own perspective, your own truth. And we all would agree that if you came to court and a father just murdered all of his children and his wife, society would say, lock that person up, throw the key away and let him rot and die and go to hell. Why would they say that? What right do they have to say that?
The act is unrighteous.
We recognize then that there are rules that we must live by that are objective, regardless of people's opinion.
Yeah.
But then where did that rule come from? Who set that standard?
Yeah. Who said that this, independent of your feelings, is correct?
Who said that? Right?
The government.
Ooh, the government. But the government made up of who?
People.
So that's their opinion.
It's legally correct.
Well, I didn't ask you
So
legally.
it's
I
not their
asked you,
feelings. It's objective. It's legally.
Are they people, and is it their opinion?
Are you saying that a person can't have an objective thought? It can only be their opinion?
No, that what I'm saying is I'm asking, the opinion came from individuals, yes? And collectively, they came up with an opinion, yes?
An opinion, or did they come up with
They came up with a rule.
a rule?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm asking.
Where
you.
did they get that rule from to determine that would be right or wrong? You have to ask yourself that. You have to ask yourself. Society themselves.
They probably looked and
But
seen.
what happens if there is another society that disagree completely and they're saying, no, what you're saying is wrong? Can both of them be right at the same time?
No.
That's where we have our dilemma, people. So if we have that dilemma, we have to solve that dilemma. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
So we have that problem or that dilemma. What's the root to that dilemma? The root to that dilemma is that somebody's not agreeing that there is an objective moral value within society, that is within society, that is the standard, regardless of what everybody thinks or other people think. So you have to come to this conclusion then that if you have a moral law, there must then be a moral lawgiver.
Yes.
This is the evidence we're asking you guys to investigate. This is what we're asking you to investigate. We're asking you to investigate the facts of others' opinions and measure those opinions on what is logical, what comes to a rational conclusion. Can two groups of people simultaneously be right and disagree with each other when it comes to moral value and duty?
A universalist will say yes.
But on what premise are they saying yes? Regardless, anybody can say yes, but on what premise are they saying yes? Because it's within that we would see what they're going by to say yes or conclude by saying yes. Well, how would a universalist say yes?
Yeah, I would say that you would have to ignore the laws of logic to try to be right. And I think at that point, if you're going to be illogical to try to be rational, then that makes no sense. And what I mean by laws of logic, one of the laws is the law of contradiction, or non-contradiction. Basically, what you're saying is that a person is saying A and non-A can be true at the same time at the same place, and you're saying
It's impossible.
it can't be.
Can't.
So if you're saying Christianity is the way, but then you're saying, but Islam is the way too. But if Christianity says Islam isn't, and Islam says Christianity isn't, how could they both be true? It's a contradiction. So one of the laws of logic is the law of non-contradiction. And I'm just saying, for a person to say that both of those things can be true, then you just have to throw logic out the window in order to try to be rational. And at that point, I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to get to the point where I'm illogical to try to sound rational.
So here's where a lot of people see flopping. So here's what will happen. Nobody nowadays would ever want to say that somebody else's opinion is wrong, because that's the kind of society we live in. We want everybody to be able to express their own opinion and agree to their own opinion and have their own opinion.
But that's true. Nobody's opinion is wrong.
What I'm saying is that that you can't say that it's wrong. You can have your opinion. You can't stop anybody from having their opinion. What nobody will say is that opinion is wrong. Everybody's afraid nowadays to disagree with other people's opinions. What they'll say is, well, you have your version and I have my version.
Right.
But if both versions contradict each other, why are you tolerating moving forward with somebody being wrong? We're talking about on morality. We're not talking about if the Knicks are good or not. That's something different.
Well, we know we are. 1-0, holla at us. What I'm saying is, and I think you're clarifying it now. When you say opinion is not truth-based, fact-based. So therefore, it can't be wrong because it's just how you feel. But what you're actually saying is, when a person is saying truthful things, which is not an opinion, nobody wants to be wrong, which is why they say live in your own truth. And to that point, I agree with you by stating that nobody wants to say that somebody's truth is wrong, but that isn't right. But you can have an opinion can't be wrong.
Well, no,
it's an opinion. It's how you feel.
No, it's an opinion of how you feel. But what you're doing is you're expressing it as a fact. That's your point.
And my point is, once you do that and say, now I can measure you on a fact-based system.
But that's what I'm saying. Okay, so to clarify, that's an inference on my part when I'm saying your opinion. You're expressing your opinion as fact.
As fact. Okay.
So when you're expressing your opinion as fact, let's just say in a room full of people, in a room full of people, and let's just say you're hearing in this group of people them expressing their opinion about abortion. Okay. Now, many groups of people will not want to argue with people, or they won't want to just hold people to the fire and say, you're wrong, you're right. There are people that are out there. But what I'm saying is that when you're expressing yourself as an opinion, you're expressing it as a fact. You're saying, I believe abortion is wrong. Somebody else will say, I believe women's rights are what we should be looking for. Mm-hmm. They're not actually, nobody's actually going to say killing babies is right. Nobody's going to really say that because we all agree that killing babies is wrong. However, where they will start flipping, going back and forth when you flopping is when you start talking about things such as, God. When you start talking about the existence of God, people will say, well, I don't believe that God exists. And then you'll start to talk about, let's just say another subject matter regarding somebody's opinion where they go back and forth, meaning I know that killing babies is wrong and that's an opinion. But then over here, well, you can't tell me you can't tell me I'm wrong. Over here, you're saying it's wrong, but over here, you're saying you can't tell me I'm wrong.
Right.
You see what do you guys get what I'm saying here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in this type of thinking, the person has to be willing to understand that once you throw something out there, let me back up. Sometimes the reason that people don't jump in to address something being right or wrong is because of how sensitive the topic is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I agree. Yeah.
So when something's so sensitive, it doesn't remove the fact that there still isn't something objective about it. Like there still could be somebody right or wrong. It's just, I know you're not going to listen because your emotions are so heavied into it. But I'm going somewhere with this. Because people's emotions are they're so confident in how they feel, they think that makes what they're saying correct.
Sure.
And by doing that, I'm saying that that's how they can come to that type of conclusion. They can emphatically say, I don't want to kill babies, because these same people don't even want to harm, animals.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the time they're like vegan. They don't want to. Okay, cool. So then of course they don't want to harm babies. But at the same time, they're like, well, no, but you can't tell somebody what to do. But you're telling me over here to not wear this sheepskin wool coat. But over here, you're telling me I can't tell. So I think that people don't, their emotions are so high, it clouds their ability to.
I totally agree. But to cut through that emotion, you objectively have to be able to understand why you're making that opinion a fact.
Yes.
You have to be able to argue. You don't have to, because many of them don't. They just say that's that's just what I believe. But if you're going to have a logical discussion, which I feel Christianity has every right to sit at the table and have a logical discussion. But if you're going to combat the ideology of Christianity, then you have to prepare and bring enough evidence of why you believe your opinion is fact. And a lot of times when you do that, then you have to start breaking down your own belief system. For instance, when I say something is morally right? Morally right.
Okay.
What I'm saying is whether something is good or bad.
Okay.
When you say that, like something is good or bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I'm going to do something good or if I'm doing something bad, it's based off of the value of someone else, or the value of something. So do I believe that humans have value?
Do I believe that? Yeah.
So if I believe that humans have value and I recognize their value, then I have a duty to perform a certain way because of the value of the human being. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes. If they have value, I am obligated to treat it with that type of value.
Correct. Now, that's where duty comes in. But I may not feel that duty if I feel like there's no value in human beings. But that's where the problem lies. You do believe there's value in human beings, but then why do you make it seem like certain duties are not objective? It's just like it's an opinion. Meaning, again, why do you say killing babies is wrong, but I can still exert the idea that you can't tell me if I'm right or wrong? Like, I don't. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that one, it's the job of the believer to be able to get people to state whether this is an opinion or a fact. Hold them to it, no matter what they say, how passionate they are saying it. First of all, make sure you're listening to what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is to say, like, okay, so I hear everything you're saying. I'm gonna run it back. Now, are you saying this is a factual thing, or are you just saying that this is just how you feel and believe? From there, you'll be surprised at the next statement, because the next statement is going to sound something like this. no, that's just my opinion. And then you could say, oh, okay, well, I'm just, I no offense and in all due respect, I want to have a conversation about the facts of this. Or you'll hear them say, well, I mean, nothing is really, factual like that. We all just subjectively have our opinions. And then from there, you can maneuver from in that space as well, too.
Mhm.
So is that statement that you just said, is that an objective statement or is that subjective?
Well, it's you're playing both. You have to play. If you're not going to go through the progression of logic, you're going to flop on both ends. You're going to hold an opinion and then you're going to deny another's opinion, which is then you're not putting yourself in their shoes. You're accepting your opinion, but not accepting another person's opinion. So you're flopping. You're like saying, it's okay for me to have my right, but it's not okay for you to have your right because I disagree with your right.
Right.
You see that?
I see that.
So how then do you have your rights? What is your basis for what is right? We can't just assume that. Let's just use the word love. Okay.
Okay.
How do you assume what love should look like? How do you come to that conclusion? Is it just mere progression? Because again, you're dealing with we have to make sure
There's a formula. There's a calculated formula that scientists use to.
You cannot produce love in a test tube, as one man said.
There's a formula.
There's no formula for love in the sense of a test tube or science.
There's a chemical formula for love.
There's no chemical formula for love. So then why are we saying love one another? Why are we saying that? Why do we hold the premium of loving one another? There's got to be something about the human value. There's got to be something unique about the human value, because we could just say, we'll just act like baboons, and a baboon will walk up to a female baboon and just start having intercourse with it.
Well, maybe we see from society, we recognize, oh, it feels good to get love because we've now grown to see that before we just acted all like that and all wild and it didn't work for us. But now we evolved to say, hey, you know what? We see that this is good for society to love.
That's what we're saying.
We see that it's good for society to no longer treat people this way.
But what happens if another society says, no, we believe that we should treat others that way to preserve our lineage. We must cause their demise so that we exist.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, how can you logically come to a conclusion that both of them are right? You can't.
Eventually, one of them will evolve to the other side.
We're not talking about evolving by dominance. That would be submission. That'd be submission. We're talking about free will and choice. We're talking about how do you come to that logical conclusion? People, we have to ask this question.
So you're saying morality is just not innate? Like it's not just something that's just in us that we just understand and just know this is wrong, this is right.
That is correct. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is that we have something higher than us that has imposed that upon us to think and use for good judgment of knowing the difference between right and wrong, bad and good. Man did not come up with that concept themselves.
Okay.
Now, here's what I'm not saying. Let's make sure you also understand what I'm not saying as a Christian. I am not saying you have to believe in God to do good. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
So make sure people understand that I'm not here defending that only good people believe in God. That's not what my argument. My argument is saying if God doesn't exist, then moral duty and value do not exist. Moral duty and value do exist. Objective moral value and duty exist. Therefore, God exists. You with me?
I'm with you.
So I'm not saying you have to believe in God in order to do good, because there are many people who don't believe in God who do good, do very good. What do you have to say about that?
No, for the sake of the discussion, I agree.
Just for the line of reasoning as regarding, we're talking about the evidence that exists that God did it. The evidence does exist. And now we're using the moral argument to prove that there was a higher being, higher than man, who set in order the moral order of mankind. Not just the natural order of the physical, but the moral order as well. that was set in order because man could not come. Did not create the idea of peace. Man did not create the concept of love, or man did not create the concept of justice. For instance, if I were to say justice exists, right? Well, justice exists when the case, if justice did not exist, then it was brought, like that had to become a concept that was developed by a greater mind. And the greater mind helps us to understand what justice looks like. Because again, if there was no difference, if there was no beef between you and I, where justice needs to prevail for us to squash and have peace, if there was none of that, then where's justice? It lives on its own somewhere, and it shows up when we have beef. This is what people are saying, that these kind of abstracts exist somewhere, and just
arbitrarily they
they were just.
So as they arbitrarily just exist out there, justice, goodness,
and then we pick it up along the way.
Yeah, I guess the question is, how do you pick it up?
Or where did it come from?
Where did it come from? And is that what created us? Like,
right.
like these things, like did justice like just start off like in you, or are you saying no, once you reach a certain level of consciousness, it just drops down on you? And if that's the case, then why then do we still see the injustices of
Correct.
people at a certain, like, why
didn't justice pick itself up there and just set an order? Hey, this is wrong, and you guys
and love, and
you understand what I'm saying? So it can't be an abstract that just arbitrarily on its own just wanders away and wanders back when it sees disgruntled people disagreeing with one another, and then all of a sudden justice shows up to settle the score and keeps people at peace again. No.
Yeah.
So then where did that subject come from? How did that get set in order in our morality? How do we understand that? And again, we're saying that if God didn't exist, these kind of concepts could not exist. But because we understand objective moral values exist, then God exists. I'm also saying that you do not have to believe in God for you to do good. We're just saying because God does exist, good does exist. Because good is of him. You following that?
I'm following that. So
are you sure you're following that?
I'm following that. And you stated already that some people would say, I believe in objective moral values and duties, but I don't believe that it's God who's the person who
then where did that origin come from? So you have to be able to logically come to a conclusion of where that came from. So when you start hearing the answer, well, it always existed. How? How did it just exist? And if it predates humans, how could something like that predate humans when humans are the ones that have to use it? Like, who started that? How is that going to just pre-exist arbitrarily, you know what I'm saying, as an abstract, and then we pick it up along the way? It doesn't work like that. That's not logical.
Yeah.
Where are you going with this?
No, my mind is just thinking about the different alternatives that people will use.
Yes, they will use
for morality. And for me to say that it always existed, right for wrong, I actually don't have a problem with them saying that it always existed, morality always existed. My issue is, how did that which always exists convey the information? Because
that's what I'm right.
Because God always existed.
Well, no, remember they say that. Oh, that's a good one. That's funny. I'll go back to that in a second. But how can that exist? Right? What was the purpose of it existing? There was nothing. If there was no time, space, or matter, how could love exist?
If there was no time, space, or matter.
And they're saying that this always existed. How is that the case then? What's the purpose of love existing if there's no time, space, or matter? And are you saying love predates time, space, and matter? Well, that's absurd. That doesn't even make any sense.
Why is it absurd for you for love to exist outside of
space, time, and matter?
Because you're saying that there's not something to be loved.
How would it be conveyed? How would it exist? It's not some kind of It's not some kind of force or energy that's in material evidence or materialistic, force that just moves upon an individual to do it. When you feel love, it's not that you feel the energy of love. What you feel is a concept and your understanding of the joy of loving another person or the joy of being loved by another person. That's what you're experiencing, but that is still based on the understanding you comprehend regarding what love looks like.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So it's not energy floating into your eardrums and that love energy hits your heart and makes your intellect say, oh, that's love. You understand me? It's objective truths that are understood and held over a consistent period of time for it to fulfill and flourish and bring the results of what love is. Same with justice and same with peace. But if man did not value man, you with me?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see men as valuable, if they just see us as, if we just see ourselves as just arbitrary species that we have no obligation to it, then we would go around barbarically killing one another. We would go barbarically raping women and children and doing all and murdering and doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's
but we claim it as wrong. What I'm saying is
we now like
no, we've always claimed it as wrong. It's always been around as wrong. But we want to force people
objectively, yes. But the people,
but that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm only talking about proven objective truths must then come from an objective lawgiver. That's what we're saying. And we're not leaving objective moral duties subject to the intellect of man alone. They're not the author of it. It had to come from a lawgiver. It had to come from somebody higher.
Or that which created it.
Yes.
Because now you have the design for which you designed.
Correct.
Like the designer knows now how love should be displayed and performed because he created human beings and understands the subject matter. So because he understands the value of humanity because they're created in his image and likeness, he then understands the makeup of humanity and understands what they need. This is why humanity needs love. This is why they need. So when you remove the concept of God and you remove the concept of value, then you leave humanity to itself, which is selfish to itself.
But not only that, they're subject to only what they feel is right. When
Correct.
Another group of people say that's wrong, yet both of them simultaneously are saying, no, we're right. There's something wrong there. So how do we set the level? How do we make it level to where, no, there is an absolute objective moral truth existing. And because we know it exists, then God exists because it's the order from him. God set the order of moral order and moral duty and what's right and wrong.
And I think that if people removed certain subject matters that are sensitive to them and just said something that wasn't so sensitive to them, they could agree and come to that type of
Correct.
thinking, like
Correct.
like you mentioned earlier. Their issue is when it becomes to these sensitive matters. But as I'm thinking about that, that's a good enough point for you to see that this issue that you're having, this moral issue that you're having, it's already answered through your understanding of, are there objective moral values and duties, or is it just that we subjectively say these things are right or these things are wrong? Mm-hmm. So I think people are okay with that. Ultimately, people just don't want to be held responsible to objective moral values and duties.
I heard a man say one time, he heard somebody say, how did he say it? To your point that you just made, they were like, what did they say? He said something. Oh man, I'm messing it up. I can't even think of it, but it definitely goes along the lines of him saying that, I can't even get it. Let's move on. Dang, I can't think of it.
Well, anyways, but that's just a good point to understand. People will agree with objective moral values and duties when it's not something that's a sensitive topic.
Right.
Their issue ultimately is they don't want to be held when it's something now that they so strongly believe in. They don't want to be held accountable for this God now who's holding them accountable to
Correct.
this objective
Correct.
standard. Like,
Right.
no, I want the wiggle room to say, like, well, that's just your truth and that's just how you feel,
Right.
and let me stay in this moment. But it's like that's not rational, that's not responsible. And if you're a person who seeks truths, and I really believe honestly that society wants to seek truth. They want to have this understanding of what is factual and what's right. The problem is that because of their selfish nature to want to be right and to not want to be held accountable, then they push back their thirst for truth just to be right in this moment and hold on to that.
Yeah. That's equivalent to what we talk about, the God vacuum. Okay.
Okay.
The God vacuum is people long to have what is substantially true.
Right.
They want to be satisfied internally in their spirit. The problem is that they're not willing to go on the journey to have it satisfied.
Okay. Yeah. Agreed.
They're not willing. Many people will not go on the journey to actually find true contentment and peace. They say they want it, but they only want it to a degree that allows them to hold on to their selfishness at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
And so
I want truth, but I also want
satisfaction my way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the God vacuum. That's the thing that people don't
I want
understand.
truth, but I want multiple women.
I want to know what truth is. Oh, but I also want to be able to play around on the side. Like, that's the problem with humanity. It's like, yes, to your point, everybody does want the truth, meaning that's that God vacuum. That's that emptiness inside the soul of man that is longing to really, really know conceptually in their mind what truth is, and to have it just dominate their very being, to dominate their very core. The problem is that they're not willing to walk in the journey to obtain it, because they're too selfish to let go. I have a message coming up that deals with we're not ready to let God be almighty. We just want to call him almighty, because we're not ready to let go of the things that will allow him to be almighty in our lives.
That's good. I'll be there for that one in a couple of weeks.
This guy.
I'll be there.
But it's the same thing. People want that craving in their soul. I'm going to keep repeating it. So many people call it the God vacuum. Preachers call it the God vacuum. There's an emptiness, a vacuum, longing, just absorbing energy from your spirit and mind, absorbing your thought process and draining you mentally because you want truth so bad. The problem is you're not willing to walk the journey to obtain it, because you want to still satisfy yourself with selfishness, and you still have a pride about you that won't let go of the things that are interfering with your ability to walk in the journey. And
and part of that selfishness is the losing of friends, the losing of
we'd have to talk about it.
Money, the losing of some people are not ready to lose certain, popularity, certain, whatever the case may be,
certain status you might hold right now
for truth's sake. So I rather tell you, well, that's your opinion, and I understand.
That's easy. Yeah.
Living your truth. It's just easier to tell you that, rather than it is to say, listen, I'm not here to condemn you to something. I'm not here to say that I hold that power. I'm here to state this. For me, God is the moral lawgiver. Here's his standard. Here's why I believe this to be true. You don't have to agree with it, but I at least want to know, why do you disagree? What's the pushback from this statement? And if it's just, well, I just don't believe that. Cool. I can say that about your statement, but I want to know, like, is there something that you can show that is false, that is inaccurate, that shows some kind of contradiction that's flawed? Can you, and if you can't, then right now at this time, I'm not saying you have to believe it, but you can't go against it. Like, I'm not saying you have to believe it, but you can't go against it. And I think that the more we have healthier dialogue to say, I'm not here to judge you personally for your statement. I don't have that authority and power, but I do believe that when you care about truth enough, you want to engage to see what is actually right and what is actually wrong. Bottom line. And that's what any person should want.
Well, the Bible reveals to us that, to your point about having that conversation, coming to that point in your life that you're willing to have that conversation. Okay. The Bible reveals to us that men love darkness rather than light. That's why they avoid the light. Well, that would start with the conversation. You avoid an honest, truthful conversation. A lot of people do. Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people do avoid an honest, truthful conversation, that they're willing to put their line of reasoning under the microscope to be examined thoroughly, logically, rationally. How complete is it? How coherent is it? What are you able to substantiate that evidence with, or that thought that you have? What evidence do you bear so that you can remain consistent in that line of reasoning holistically? A lot of people refuse to have those conversations, including Christians refuse to have those kind of very deep, intimate conversations in order to set your soul aright to be on the path that is honestly directed by God. Because we want our selfish ways. The Bible says men love darkness rather than light. Light exposes, light puts information under the microscope for it to be examined clearly and identifying the counterfeit that exists. Many people live with a counterfeit mentality. They make believe it's right, but they really can't substantiate if it's right or wrong. It's just how they feel about it. They feel good about it, therefore they maintain it. But if you were to put it underneath the microscope of light, you might realize you've been living by a counterfeit ideology that is not a replica of God. It's not of God at all. So people don't want to have that kind of conversation. Like, that's where it begins. And if you're not willing to have that conversation, you certainly aren't going to agree with, opinions that are directed by light, that represent light. You're not going to join in those kind of, behaviors or activities or opinions. But that's on that individual.
They don't even see it as light.
They don't. They see what they're thinking as light. And let me say this for you Christians that may be watching, who might watch it later on the reset,
on the replay,
playback. Let me say this: you have an obligation of helping people come to that point of understanding. You have an obligation of helping people walk through misinformation and counterfeits and so on, and help them work through all of that patiently so that you can keep giving them a little bit of light at a time that hopefully is being absorbed, that helps their soul filter through all of the doubt or all of the challenges that they have of coming to a newer and a more truer understanding of their purpose and existence. You as a Christian have that obligation of helping people walk through that. By no means are you supporting darkness by being patient. You by no means are you supporting all of that. What you're doing is you're being patient with people. You're allowing your time and space to be absorbed with somebody who needs to know the truth and who's struggling with the truth. Don't judge them. Don't condemn them. Just keep that light lit in front of them. Keep that light lit, as Jesus says, let your light so shine before all men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Ultimately, we want the light to help shine so that it leads them to the Lord. That's what we need to do. Amen?
Amen. Agreed.
So hopefully you're able to work through a lot of the circumstantial evidence that we come up with and presented, that we logically have come to the conclusion without a reasonable doubt, God is the one who did it. He is the cause of creation, the cause of the moral order, the cause of the fine-tuning of the universe. He's the cause of man's existence. And we've presented our circumstantial evidence, and we hope that the jury finds God the one who did it. Right. Raise your hand. Lift your voice. Hear, hear.
And this God, as you stated before, is just a monotheistic God at this point, right now.
At this point.
We haven't stated which God is actually.
But if you come to this point, then we'll be able to start dealing with, all right, if God does exist, now he's obviously revealed himself in a personal way for you to know him personally.
Yeah. And I say that the easiest place to start is the God of the Bible, because there's one test that you can do and prove, and you don't even have to go through the rest of the Bible. It's to start at the resurrection. If you can disprove the resurrection did not exist, then our entire faith hangs on that. Our preaching and teaching is in vain. We are found to be false witnesses. So just start with Christianity.
And eat, drink, for tomorrow you die, and nothing happens afterwards, as Paul says. We are men most miserable.
Sheesh. Our faith is to be pitied. So yes, he did it. So yeah, if you like this information, you want any resources, hit us up. We'll let you know on working through the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, and then the moral argument. But if there's any other discussions, topics, things you want to ask about verses, let us know. And on one of these Tuesday live discussions, we'll be able to discuss that topic and go into detail with it with you. And, it'll continue to be a healthy dialogue. So see you next Tuesday, 7:45 p.m. Go over to the Righteous Unity YouTube channel, like the video, share the video.
Wait a minute. Jack's going to be by himself next week.
Next Tuesday, I'm by myself.
Next Tuesday,
I'm
because
Dolo again.
Because I'll be in Puerto Rico with my wife, because we celebrating 25 years of marriage. You know what I mean?
Woo!
25 years.
25.
So I'm going to be in Puerto Rico. I'm going to be on the island. I'm going to be on that beach.
He'll be watching us. He'll be watching us.
No, I will not. I will
He'll
not.
be watching Real Talk.
I'm disconnecting from the world for 7 days.
Sheesh.
Yeah,
but
buddy.
you ain't disconnected from God, though. So you're
not disconnected from God. I'm staying connected there.
Well, all right. We'll see.
Especially on that island. God's got to keep me anchored.
Well, we
gotta keep me anchored.
I'll see you next Tuesday, 7:45 p.m. God bless.
God bless.